Okay, so I'm Matt Stuckwisch. I've been doing most all stuff over there on the Raku side, so some of you may have seen me, some of you may have not. But anyway, so other things you might not know about me. I work with lots of old stuff. I'm not actually a tech worker. I work in academia, in literature, and that kind of stuff. So like this is the actual first page of the book I studied for my dissertation. That's also one that an author that I worked with, that same author, his book, I mean, it's almost got as much line noise as Pearl has, so, you know. But the other day, I came across some positively ancient code. And you know, I'm a little young, so I wasn't really sure what this was. Thankfully, there are some people here who have experienced this code for real in their career. And they told me that this code here is basically the same. This was me. I was like, what? Thought to ask people. And they told me this is basically the same as say, get squared. This is the Raku version of it, all right? And you know, on my talks, I've been talking about reusing code, making stuff nice and modular and things like that. So I said, well, you know, in Raku, I would just do this to make it reusable, make a nice little sub-function out of it. But then I thought, gosh, I had to actually understand that code to really be able to do that. So I went back to this code, and I just said, let's change a couple of lines. I'm gonna say basic square, give it a single value, and say return at the very end. And then I just throw in my little stuff up there, and oh, it runs. Because we have slangs in Raku, and I wrote a little slang that will capture this. As soon as it sees that basic keyword and it gets the function name, it actually does a parameter. That is not a valid signature in Raku code, but it's a valid basic signature in Raku code. And then as soon as it hits that brace, it switches the language and starts parsing this as basic. No changes necessary, don't have to do any Raku grammar or anything, 100% basic code, copy paste it in, and it runs. And it just passes in that value. And in the background, what this is doing, it actually is compiling in, as Daniel mentioned, Raku AST. This is experimenting around with that Raku AST, and it generates this function in the background, which I had to make a very little basic VM to handle it, and it just gives me my values, pulls in the argument, then we keep a little index of the line numbers with an actual, the array, and then we create the array of all the different subs, and then we just loop through it till it gets a return value, and we're done. And so, why? Well, because I can. But, you know, and I said, yes, and I know, Damien could do this in Perl, half asleep, with a broken keyboard, one hand tied behind his back while listening to some impossibly catchy song that he can't get out of his head, okay? But the rest of us are mere mortals, so we need to use like Raku for it, okay? But seriously, imagine what you can do with this technique, maybe not with basic, but for instance, let's say you're having to regularly use JavaScript regexes, which are close to, but not exactly the same as other regexes. Well, what if you could just do ECMA regex and then make your little validator, and then just copy and paste your old JavaScript one directly into your Raku code and have it run exactly like it would be in JavaScript? Or, I don't know, maybe throw in a C function and have it on compile, go through, run a C compiler, then link it in with a native call function so that you get all the nice speedy stuff when Raku's not fast enough for you. So all of a sudden we have lots of different languages, and just made me think back to an old image that some of y'all may have seen before. Combining everything together into one. And that is my talk.